Hello, Jess Claire and Tom Forts Mayer here for Evolution Solutions again. If you're just jumping on, please say hello. Hello to the Earth Elders group. We're live across 4 platforms: Tom Fort Mayer, Jess Claire, Earth Elders, Raw Explore. What am I doing? Raw, Real, and Amplify. Hey, Haley, please do jump on and say hello. We've got an interesting one tonight, talking about grappling with life, the masculine and feminine. Tom wants to talk about that, sex, gender. How do we do what's aligned with who we really are? Just before I go any further, I'm Jess Claire. I run a group called the Real Jess Claire Group, a social media school to make visionaries and creatives amplify their message across the globe and take over mainstream media. That's just me. And Tom, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thank you. Yeah, I run Free Mind, which is passionate about enabling people to live their lives with more peace, power, and purpose. But really, I've just, for the last 20 years, I've just been obsessed with the human condition, happiness, and what can be done to enable us to enjoy our lives more easily, more meaningfully. And so it's been a joy to have these conversations, to be exploring these conversations. Hi, Haley. Nice to see you. And yeah, you may be watching on my page. You may be watching on, we're kind of going on about 5 or 6 different places. So
We are.
lots of different people in lots of different places.
We do. And we would love you to, we got hello, Jess and Tom. If I only could find myself. Have I not gone to my own page? I have. I'm trying to find my own page so I can see you guys. Oh, here we are. Just so I can see who is here. Hello, Cassandra. Hello, Amanda Burnett. Who else is there? Anyone who is jumping on, please get engaged in this conversation. I want to start by, and please make comments and any questions as well on this conversation. Tom wanted to start about the masculine and the feminine. I don't know if you guys, there may be people on my page that don't know what that means. So maybe, why don't you explain, what is this masculine and feminine thing that we talk about, Tom?
1 second. 1 second. Mayhem happening downstairs, so I thought I'd close the door. So, I mean, for me, and this is a grapple, like always, the thing I want people to know about these conversations is what's fun for me here, and I think what's valuable for all of us here is that you and I are not having this opportunity to talk about things that we know about, right? We're looking into topics that we're curious about and having conversations at the edge of evolution, the edge of consciousness. We might get it wrong. We might not even say something that totally reflects our values or our beliefs because we want to have the courage in a public forum to say, I'm not sure about this, or I'm confused about this, and I have part of me that feels this and part of me that feels that. And so within that, this one is definitely blurry for me, but I'm just noticing my old kind of definitions of the kind of the archetypes of the divine masculine and the divine feminine. Now, these are the energies inside all of us, but it's like, and I'm no expert on these, and so I might have it wrong, you know, and like in some ancient texts, maybe they've nailed it and actually it's really liberating, but I'm starting to feel or starting to suspect that a lot of these old kind of ideas, you know, the feminine's all receptive and going with the flow and earthy, and the masculine's all laser focused and gets things done. And I don't know, the more I'm evolving, the more those traits seem to be balancing in me, but I'm less and less comfortable labeling them as feminine and masculine. It's like this, the divine masculine or the divine feminine start to, I think, actually render each other meaningless. And there's this middle ground, which I think might be non-binary.
Yeah, and this is where I brought it into gender. Sorry, keep going. Okay.
Yeah, and so I'm curious because I don't know about numbers of people who are now kind of not identifying as he or she, and they would rather be known as they, and they are identifying as non-binary. I don't know if those numbers are increasing, but I think they are. It's definitely becoming on my radar more and more. Maybe it's just about permission or social courage. But I'm really curious about, maybe that is a really beautiful and powerful evolutionary step in our thinking, that we actually get beyond this idea of gender, and certainly within our kind of maybe our spiritual work, all labels, are limitation and temporary. So I'm just kind of really dropping into really, really lovely to have a conversation with someone who's currently identifying as non-binary, to find out, does this have a spiritual counterpart to it, a foundation or an incidental spiritual benefit? Or was that its primary purpose? Or is it literally just, I do not identify with either, and it's not because I'm kind of having some kind of enlightened conscious experience. I just don't think of myself as a girl or a boy. So I was just really, really, really interested, because I have a suspicion that moving beyond these labels, moving beyond, it's like this internal gender diversity inside ourselves, which renders the whole thing non-dual. And the high point of spirituality, as I can understand it, is non-dualism, where we really do get beyond label and morality. And therefore, I'm just wondering about whether that is actually a new development. And we need a new archetype, which is not the divine masculine or the divine feminine, but it's this singular non-binary experience inside ourselves, which has all of those traits finely and perfectly balanced.
It's interesting you're talking about this, because a year ago I wouldn't have even known what you're talking about. So I don't know if anyone else is watching and doesn't know what the masculine and the feminine means. So if anyone, the divine masculine and the divine feminine is something that I came across when I went and did this retreat a year ago. I'd never heard of it before. When I thought of masculine, and when I thought of feminine, I thought of male, female. For me, it was just, they were synonymous, right? And I was like, oh, then if masculine, a man is masculine, a woman is feminine, and that's it. And what I found is I didn't feel like I fit. I just never said that. When I was about 7 years old, I asked my parents for a sex change. And and my mum freaked out, right? But the reason wasn't because I wanted to be a man. Like, I was 7, I didn't really know what I wanted. I just loved sport. I loved wearing shorts and wearing shirts. I didn't want to have long hair. And so I'm one of 8 kids. I have 6 brothers. So I was like, I want to be one of my brothers. They seem to have all the cool stuff and they have the fun. And I just want to be like that. So, but I didn't know how to articulate that. So I said, can I have a sex change? And then the whole family freaked out, right? not knowing why they did at the time. I was like, okay, well, they freaked out. And so what I could see, though, is as the only time that it became clear to me why was when I was young, when I was older, and I went a year ago to find out that there's this thing called the divine masculine and the divine feminine, and a way of thinking about the energy in which it is to, I don't know how to even explain it, but it was like, I wanted to play soccer with the boys. I was a tomboy. I wanted to do all those things, right? Maybe it's because I was a lesbian. I don't know. But until the divine masculine got explained to me, it was like, that's how I felt my whole life. But I never had a distinction for it until I was like 37. So maybe, even you saying divine masculine, divine feminine, and maybe this whole idea of non-binary is that a lot of people don't, and I at least know, that may not explore spirituality. Maybe people don't have that distinction.
Yeah. That could be distinctly possible. But I think it is a real calling for this real undoing. What we've talked about before, is this pendulum swing. So if there's a minority group that's been oppressed, then the natural stage of evolution seems to be then We have to be very, very kind of open to the fact that when rebalancing power, that group that were possibly oppressed might therefore need to have it imbalanced in their favor for a little while, just to, you know, bring it back to center. You know, it's, you know, this pendulum swing. It seems to be part of the process of evolution, and and so, but that doesn't, you know, that comes with its own problems too. You know, it's not a pleasant phase, and so I think there's just so much call. You know, it's like people talk about the solution to the unbalanced and toxic masculinity is the divine feminine. It's like, I don't think so. I don't think that's true. I think the solution to toxic masculinity is surely divine masculinity, right? It's like it's not going to be fixed over there. And it's like, again, you know, there's this more segregation, more separation. And I'm just really curious about what if we, you know, really, really, really just balance that internally, you know?
Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah.
I don't know, the more I've looked into it, the more I feel into it, it's like generalizations that I seem to be really comfortable resting in the feminine camp and the masculine camp. I'm now not sure that they're not couched in a kind of socialized chauvinism.
How is it? So you got on this call today and you were like, yeah, I'm really uncomfortable with this. I've become comfortable with this. What is it for you that's uncomfortable? And just before we go into that, just to get clear for those, is there anyone that doesn't know what this divine masculine, divine feminine, because it's so new to me, is? You know, divine masculine, divine feminine, you know, can you explain it, Tom, what it even means?
Oh, yeah, like I said, I'm not an expert in archetypal psychology, but people use archetypes to talk about a flavor of a way of being, basically, right? So I could be in my warrior, right, which means I'm all like, you know, strong, and you could be in your warrior-ess, you know, or I could be in my magician,
goddess,
right? So
my goddess.
Your goddess. Well, your goddess would be your divine feminine. But you can be operating from a couple, you know, you could be in your warrior and your divine feminine, right? And the warrior can be warrioring for the divine, but it's these flavors of being, you know, flavors and ways of being. And so I could be in my magician, you could be in your witch, yeah, you could be in your maiden, you know, I could be in my prince. These, you know, selfish dick mode, you know, there's you know, these, it's different, different ways of describing ways of being, right? And yet then there's this there's this separation between the feminine is yin, and she's receptive and creative and grounded and earthy and spontaneous and free. And it's like, and the divine masculine, there's much less spoken about the divine masculine. So I know less about that, you know, but it's you know, the king who is provider, protector, nurturer, you know, holds the kingdom steady. And in relationship, it's often described that the masculine is the riverbanks, and they create the structure so that the feminine doesn't need to worry about anything, almost like the artist and the patron. And then she can be free to be spontaneous. And then she is the gateway to the divine for the masculine, because he's naturally a bit more leaden and needs the inspiration, but he needs a free and wild woman, and she needs the masculine to hold space and to create structure. And it's like, you know what? I'm not buying into that anymore. You know, I think we have to do it all for ourselves, and then we have a chance of connecting in absolute wholeness. The divine masculine surely doesn't need anything from the queen to feel like a king. And why does the queen need anything from a king to feel like a queen? And that's the way it's kind of been talked about in the past. And it's I think it's chauvinistic. I think it's out of date, and I think it's dangerous. And I think it's time to think differently about these archetypes.
It's interesting. This is very interesting. I know that I call BS. I love that. There you go. You got a fan there. I call BS. I love Sonia. I
love Sonia too.
Yes, illusion is there a separation within. I think what is interesting for me is that when I got the idea of having this masculine energy, it gave me some sort of distinction that I could go, oh, that's why I've always kind of related to men in a particular way, right? But then I also realized how much I hadn't explored feminine energy. So it gave me, I always talk about there's things that empower you, and then they sort of tip over the edge, and then they start to constrain you.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I can hear, is that it's become like it was meant to empower something. It was meant to empower this exploration of self, and now it's tipped over to begin to start to close something down and constrain.
I think that's true. And I think that might be just personal. And I can totally get that. Archetypes can be really handy to be able to identify how we're operating, right? What I really like is to maybe just create, I've been stuck with this idea of the elemental, which is the archetype of the union, whereas an individual, we actually have both those energies perfectly balanced. We wouldn't label them as being anything other than our true essence, and actually it means there would be a fluidity in us where we could draw on all the resources of all the flavors, from witch to wizard to king to queen, and I'm curious about the fact, as I realized that for me the most exciting form of spirituality is non-dualism, which moves beyond all labels. And yet also within this archetype, I'm feeling this drawn for this non-binary archetype, which I'm currently kind of talking about as being the elemental, and it's elemental. Like the elemental. It's like, oh, I'm in my divine masculine, I'm in my divine feminine. No, I'm in my elemental. I'm in my element. I'm totally free, beyond conditioning, beyond label, and fluid, really fluid. So let me just. We've got some comments happening, so let's.
Yeah, you have. You got a lot of comments here. This one. How duality expressed through gender archetypes. The duality contributes to the pendulum swing. Well, this one. Remember, we're in a 3D matrix. Color, clothing, behavior, brain, function has all been programmed and assigned to gender. Both energies are functionally evenly in my soul. My soul is housed in a female form. It's happy that this people's judgment, instead of allowing me to be able to celebrate the gifts both bring within my wholeness.
Yes.
That's more like you're talking about, right?
Yeah,
that defines exactly it.
And I'm feeling that draw. People have in the habit in the past of kind of, not pointing fingers, but categorize me as being,
feminine.
Well, it went from being in touch with my feminine side in the 90s to now, because I'm able to not have control, not have agenda, not have spreadsheets, not make a plan for my workshops, turn up, be present, and go with the flow. And people say, well, that's typically the divine feminine. I'm like, well, it doesn't feel particularly feminine to me. And actually that enables me to be efficient and capable and provide and be powerful in response to the moment, which would be typically the masculine, divine masculine. And it's like, there's a transcending label here. And I think it would just be really good to have on the table in this archetypal thing some non-binary, non-gender-based archetypal vibrations. We're inclusive. It's like internal gender diversity.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I think what I can hear is that it's now the same. I'm going to talk as a lesbian, someone that is like really big on sex, sexuality, gender, studied it for a long time, right? Which I think is where we can relate to this. Is at some point a whole group of people didn't feel like man or woman, masculine or feminine. And so the idea that it had to fit into one of the two categories kind of gave birth to this idea of a non-binary human being, right? So there's now this gender called non-binary. What they've actually studied, sociologists, so many people have done some studies now and found that based on the brain science and the chemistry and the genealogy and genetics, that there's actually around 18 genders. It's just that we created a binary of masculine, feminine, male, female, right? So you can go do, so you can go and do this study yourself. You don't have to believe me. There's anyone that's watching that understands this will know that there's loads of different actual genetically gendered differences between us. And yet we came up with male, female. At some point, male female has become very constraining. So I'm not surprised that once we've evolved in the masculine and feminine energies and integrating them into ourselves so that we're fully integrated, that it's now become a constraint. And you're looking for something that's non-binary because male female's made up anyway.
Yeah, fascinating. And I know people are saying, don't relate it to masculine, feminine, call it yin and yang. I appreciate that, Tamsin. I just think I think where I'm getting to is just any label that has something distinct from another has benefits and also has limitation. This is, the magic of oneness philosophy and oneness spirituality, where we transcend those labels, all those ideologies. We're so, people commonly are so addicted to building an identity around those things that it can be problematic. Ria's just said it's not that they're always perfectly balanced, but it's the ability to fluctuate between all the flavors more fluidly, or some version of that. And but I like the idea that those fluctuations wouldn't be labeled as one thing or another.
So we got this question here. If we can be all energies, why do we seek partners? I think it's a really good question.
So yeah, me too. Someone else was that as well. It's like, but in relationship, we need these polarities, right? We need these polarities for attraction, right?
So then it is so what we're saying here, what you're saying here is that you don't want it to be non-binary. Non-binary is constraining. However, polarity implies binary.
Well, it would be unlikely if you were with a partner that was like super fluid, right? That sounds different, right? But if if they were, if you were the partner that was able to fluctuate between all their energies, right? They would be on any given day, any number of different flavors that could have, in relationship to wherever we're at, it is likely that there would still be magnetism and play and joy. From another perspective, it's like every day would be a new partner, and you would be a new partner to your partner, because there would be freshness and with that presence. So there'd be that connection and exploration. And aside from that, I mean, let's be honest, some of the greatest joys about having a partner is the practicalities of sharing the load of life. It's like, it's not just about, and it's, it makes sense to have a partner because it makes life so much easier to be partnered.
Does it? Okay, sorry, we might be going into a different
yeah, we'll come back to that. Interesting beliefs, yes.
Sorry.
Yes, on a practical basis, it's like you get to share up the tasks, right? I mean, there are domestic tasks. You get to have two streams of income into one household. I mean, there are practical benefits of being in a partnership.
If you live together.
Alzheimer's or goldfish. Oh, I love that comment. Presence.
Right.
Yeah, it's, presence. Yeah, absolutely. It is partly goldfish presence.
I'm really interested in listening to you, because I'm like, a few weekends ago, I spent some time with someone who was non-binary, and I haven't really spent much time with someone who's non-binary before. I have had friends that have said they're non-binary and then they've transitioned into trans, and transitioned from a male to a female to a male and male to female, so both. So the interesting thing about that is there's definitely an experience of not feeling very comfortable in the body. Mm-hmm. Like this is not my body. And one of the impacts of that is that there's no real expression of sexuality. Like, I don't want you to touch me. This doesn't feel like me. So you kind of find that there's some real challenges in the relationship because there's no real want to have sex or be sexual. So I find this
across the board, though, right? That I can see how that could happen, and if there's that, dysphoria within your own form or within your gender identity, but the very limited people I've spent with who identify as non-binary, some of them are really liberated in the unknowing, in the moment to moment change of what's possible, and enjoy the form they have and enjoy exploring other forms. It's not like but also, you have to understand that this is within a society that's been so binary that if you are truly non-binary, as opposed to in transition to changing gender identity, that even if you were really enlightened and free in your non-binary state, it would be really difficult to be totally at peace with that within the society, because it's been so binary based, right? So it's like, yeah, it'd be really hard to take a scientific read on that contentment at this present moment, because it must be really complicated. I mean, I want to be right on. I want to be woke. I want to do the right thing. And when I'm running workshops and I have people there that are non-binary, I spend quite a significant amount of time worrying about using the wrong pronoun, because I find it hard, because linguistically I'm not used to it,
I find this interesting, this whole conversation. I'm just listening to it going, like, what are we trying to explore here? What is it that what is it that you're really uncomfortable with? Is this idea of non-binary, or this idea of binary, right? What is it about that makes you so uncomfortable, though?
I think because over the last, actually kind of since Corona, I've been really pulling apart my belief systems and my identity and what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. And I'm less and less convinced about any kind of rigidity or identity, I think it's really liberating to get beyond all of that. And people do it in their meditations, to get present to the I amness beyond label, right? But then open their eyes and go about their day within their agenda, within their gender, within their identity. And it's like, I don't know. And I see the Tamsin saying, like, if she's going to paint a picture, she might want to be free and in the flow, and allowing it to happen with a little bit of control. But I keep to the boundaries of my paper and not draw on the table. But if I was doing a technical drawing, I'd want to be more in a more controlled state of energy with only a little flow. And that makes sense to me. But I'm a bit uncomfortable labeling one of those yin and one of those yang. It doesn't mean that I'm not. I just, and I'm not saying she uses those labels either, but I'm saying, I don't know. I'm feeling like if we could wave a magic wand and everybody dropped identity and dropped gender.
Oh, imagine what? Excuse me. If we waved a magic wand and dropped identity and dropped gender, what would there be?
Yeah, I don't know, right? And obviously you taking aside transition, right? Because the change from the norm, the transition would be about, even beautiful dances start ugly, right? Because you got to learn them, right? So it's hard to conceive of it, and it's hard to conceive of it without a transitional period of time, which would be awful. But ultimately, I mean, in my own spiritual practice, I am trying to turn up every day beyond conditioning, beyond label, beyond identity, beyond control, in flow, in presence, in power, at peace, living life on purpose as a divine vessel for what's being called for. And it's like, I'm sure everything that I walk around with thinking as any kind of label is a constriction to that. Now, historically, the world didn't, you were either, it's certainly within the kind of Indian philosophy, you were either a householder or a wandering mendicant, who is totally free to go with the divine impulse and the divine moment, and to be beyond property, beyond ownership, and just to turn up everywhere as a vessel of truth and love, right? So maybe I'm just being drawn to, as I said in Pulp Fiction, to be a bum, it's possible, right? Julian, you're going to be a bum. He's like, no, I'm going to walk the earth and be free. I don't know.
You know, this makes me think of something. I once had this conversation with my, one of my best friends, Emily, who you've just done a show with this week.
Oh.
And I said to her, imagine life. Amanda just said that there. Isn't that labeling, non-binary, binary? We're still labeling, like it's still this labeling, right?
Yeah.
And I said to her, just actually imagine there's no labels. And then I said, just imagine life without language, like without the identification and the having to make things like labeled. And I said, all there is after that is, and then I couldn't even, because I felt so compelled to use language, which was the irony of the whole thing. So I said, all there is, and I'm like giving these hand signals, and she's like, what? And I was like, the isness. And then I was like, even the isness is a label. And she's like, what do you mean by isness? And I'm like, this makes perfect sense to me, right? Just if you can imagine, take away the male, take away the female, take away the right, take away the wrong, take away the Tom is this way, take away the Jess is this way, take away the Sky, the Marilyn, the Amanda, the Tiora, everyone there, take away that you guys are a particular way. You kind of pointed it to it the other day, not the other day, just before. It's like, you just are there. You just is here right now. And this is, I'm like, isn't it? It's like it just all is here in this moment right now, right? It doesn't actually mean anything. The labels aren't anything. It's like you sort of pointed to it. It's like it's like, imagine we get fascinated and go, what's happening over there in that thing we call Tom? Or what's happening over there in that thing we call Jess or Sky or Marilyn or Amanda? And you're right, in every moment it's different.
It's different, but it's also, I sometimes say to clients when having a really difficult day, and I said, I don't want you to imagine that an alien has paid 10 million zonks to transport into your consciousness for a day to experience what it's like to have your car towed away and have your partner leave you, right? I mean, this is a very expensive anthropological excursion, and they spend an awful lot of money, so you should really have the full experience. It's like 10 million zonks is a lot of money, but you're talking about this is a well-trodden concept in Hinduism and Buddhism, right? The isness, exactly as you described, sunyata.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, this is a big concept in Eastern spirituality. It's called the isness.
I didn't even know that.
You're tapping onto 5,000-year-old natural wisdom just in your heart.
I told you I meditate and I talk to Steve Jobs, so all sorts of things comes up when I talk to the universe. But it is. It's like I can't. There's not even language to describe it. It's just, that's why it's like is. Nothing else. This just is.
Yeah. See, now we're talking. This is exciting.
Yeah, it is. Which is why I think from what I can hear, your experience, from what I can see, right? You can. Who's your alien, Jess? I don't know. But I'm an expensive 10 million gazonkas or whatever he said. But it's. Oh, what was I going to say now? I've lost my train of thought. Lost it. I've lost it.
You've lost the isness. Oh, man.
What was I saying?
I don't know. Last thing you mumbled about speaking to Steve Jobs whilst you meditate.
Oh, that's what I was saying. So what I can see is for you, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that with labels, there's what I call this like parallel paradox.
Mm-hmm.
With a label, you have some form of empowerment. And at the same time, the moment you get empowered and it reaches its kind of limit of isness, like it's lived out its isness, it becomes a constraint. And what I can hear is it started to constrain you, like it's had you feel a bit more trapped in that label.
Yeah,
I'm a divine masculine or divine feminine. I'm something else. And it's not that. So you're trying to sort of bust out of something because this isness actually is all that exists. We created divine masculine and divine feminine because at some point the world was actually more masculine, according to the doctrine, than it was feminine. And then we incorporated this idea of having this duality. And then the duality is now sort of, like you've explained, it's sort of lived out its purpose. And now there's something else. So labels are always in this parallel paradox with each other.
Yeah, labels, creed, identity, color, race, nation.
Yeah.
You know, all separation and segregation. And, you know, we have to heal the wounds of our separation, transcend it. But I think we should just have within our kind of game awareness that transcendence really is the ultimate freedom. And I love, Lorna, your mum sounds awesome. It sounds absolutely awesome. So she said, as a kid, I asked Mum if we never wore clothes, would that remove all of the different levels of society? She said, but we'd be cold people and not cold people. And then the levels could be about hair or skin color. So keep thinking, kiddo, because you've only removed financial and fashion levels. What else could you think of to level the playing field? She sounds awesome, Lorna.
She does. I want to share a story with you. It's kind of related. What's this, Jess? The fact that you lost is the isness. Lost it is the isness. Yeah. Labels do suck, but then they actually do work at some point too. They kind of have this duality in themselves. So today something happened, Tom, and I'd be interested to hear what your thoughts on this are. And this I was kind of thinking about this, right? Because, you know, this kind of like merging of being and aligning with self. And I've done so much personal development. And some of the modalities I've done are like, you've got to keep your word everywhere. And if you don't, it's got massive impacts. And then other modalities I've done, they're like, just go with the flow and just feel into it. And you don't have to do any of that. And then other modalities I've done don't even deal with that. So today I quit something for the very first time. Right. And for me, I'm like methodical, structured, keep my word, integrity, everything is keep your word. Now that, again, talking about this paradox, that used to empower me, and then it's at some point it constrained me.
Yeah.
And what happened was I called this person up and I thought, I was paying for coaching quite a lot of money. I didn't feel like I was getting value. And then I had this thought, I need to talk to them about it. But I didn't know how to talk to them about it. So I thought I'd just say that. I don't know how to talk to you about this, but I'm not really getting any value. But, you know, I don't really want to do this anymore. And here's why. And what I was met with was defense. Right? And I was able to observe it like I'd never done before. But what I said, you know, this person said to me, well, what is it that's missing for you? And I said, you know, I'm going through a lot. I've got an ex-partner who's got breast cancer. My mum is really sick and she's not far off dying. I've got 2 kids. I'm running a business. I've got a whole bunch of stuff. And I don't feel safe to tell you any of this stuff. Right? And the fact that I'm paying you this much and you don't know is a problem for me.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, I'm gonna pay you as a coach. You want to know this stuff, right? And what I was met with was safe. This is business. The fact that you want to feel safe is weird.
Wow.
And I kind of like, I mean, that just like was a nail in the coffin for me. Let me be honest. I was like, oh, well. Okay.
Well, that settles that then, doesn't it? That's easy.
That settles that for me, right? But what was interesting about that was, you know, just talking about that masculine and the feminine, what immediately went to was I wanted them to be more feminine. You know, I wanted them to surrender. I wanted them to kind of hold me in this place while I was kind of navigating myself through business. And I didn't get that. And I got that I've gotten to a place that's important to me.
Well, so this is the, you know, why I really want to speak about this as a separate thing, right? Because I love it when you get real about real things, because we have real conversations that are out of the abstract. But as I'm hearing you, my heart feels empathy. I feel compassion. I want to hold you in what you're feeling. I want to also go and smack that guy around a bit and teach him a lesson, you know. And it's like, I don't see my response and my capability of holding you in that as being intrinsically feminine, you know. I'm not about, you know, it's like,
Right.
you know, so, you know, it's like, these are the typical, that's what I mean about these kind of old social ideas, about chauvinistic ideas about what the masculine is and what the feminine is even. And I'm not on about male and female. That was a guy who was in his ego, who, you know, didn't want to lose out on his money and couldn't handle some difficult, challenging feedback, right? The fact that he responded like a dick doesn't make him in the masculine. It just makes him in his dickness, you know.
It got
right?
worse. But yeah, he was a total dick.
Yeah, well, I mean, his first response was telling, right?
Yeah, I'm glad I did it. It actually, you know, yeah, I'm very glad I did it. And then he just took me out of the program, cancelled my subscription, everything done. And I was like, wow, I've just paid you a lot of money. And that's what I was met with. So, you know, I did get it.
Did you get a partial refund or any of that?
And look, this is the first thing I've ever quit. And do you know how much I have resisted this? You know, I've only really been into the flow and alignment and values and purpose and really, really honoring that for about a year. But this is the first time I've ever quit anything on alignment.
Well, hold on a minute. Let's pull back here, okay? Because so one thing learned about being my word. I agree with being my word and having my word. My business is when I utter things, people listen. You know, as a therapist that works on the unconscious level using guided meditation, it's like the more my word has the vibration of truth, the more I'm able to transform lives. And therefore, I have to be impeccable with my word everywhere I go. I'm not always, obviously, no one is, but there's a power to truth. And if you treat your words with that kind of like sanctity, then they become magically powerful, right? I get that. So there's a thing about being free, spontaneous, in alignment, and ever evolving, and knowing we're ever evolving, which means we get very careful about what we make promises to. So that's the first part about being your word in a world of wild and wonderful evolution and spontaneity, right? And so it's like, I commit to this course whilst it feels and remains totally in alignment with my highest and greatest good, right? It's like you halfway through, you're like, I've realized I'm not getting value, I'm not enjoying it. And you're a vibration which is not bringing out the best in me. And then when I challenged you, you confirmed that isn't quitting. Nothing about that is quitting. What's quitting in that? That's a higher level of understanding and a movement to the sanctity and safety of your integrity.
Yeah. Well, I promised that I would be in that for a year. And I have broken that word of being in that for a year. You know, so, I mean, it gives me power to acknowledge that, right?
I get that. But do you see how you have to be really careful making those promises? So it's like
so much. I got that so much.
Right. So it's like I commit to this, and I'm fully committed to this group within the greatest ideals and hopes for my highest dreams and for the greatest good of all, whilst it remains in alignment with my soul. And if it feels at any point, I will have the integrity to say that I can no longer continue. Right. And it's like, you could be a completely flaky motherfucker and just use that to just backdoor out of anything. Right. But the truth is, yeah, you have to be careful with your word. You have to you have to protect it by being really careful of how you define commitment.
Yeah, well, this is, you know, this is something that.
Sorry,
are you laughing at Amanda?
Yeah, well, because she fell foul of the last promise, which I'm glad we broke, right? It's like, hallelujah.
Well, that's two promises I've broken. I'm into breaking promises now.
Yeah, so you just need to make better promises. That's it. It's like, this is not being in connection to your word. It's just be very, very mindful of what you promise, you know. Now, there is a dark side. I've got a friend I've stopped being his friend because 10 times, like 9 times out of 10 times when we agreed to make a cup of coffee, I get a text like an hour before, and the divine moment is taking him in another direction, right? And he's just like a flaky motherfucker. It's like commitment is an important part of kind of spiritual power, right? But I think there's a really big difference between seeing something isn't alignment anymore, and then, like, if you make me a promise, and then within that time scale come back to me and say I'm not going to be able to deliver, or I feel my soul's pulling me in a different direction, can we have a conversation to work out a new agreement? It's like I'm all for renegotiating our agreements, and as long as we can renegotiate an agreement, which could involve you stopping a program that I'm running, then that's still within your integrity. I mean, arguably, the integrity of that person, if I was running a workshop or a year-long container and somebody was like, I'm not getting value, I would be like, well, let me refund your money, because I wouldn't want anybody walking around feeling that they hadn't got massive value. And we seem to have lost Jess, which means I just get to keep speaking. So I will do my best. Is she back? Did she come back? Yeah.
Yes, I'm having a bit of a problem.
Oh, you saw my glee at being able to just keep talking. How embarrassing.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
I did. Oh, damn it. There's some problems. It's just told me there's a problem, but oh well. Oh well. I could tell that there was.
An online delivery problem.
Yeah, it is one of the groups. It's just not working for some reason.
No problem.
But yeah, anyway, one of the groups. Anyway, it's only one. It's not everything else. But just on what you said.
Lorna's funny. She promised to stay and you left. You broke your word, Jess. You broke your word.
Yeah, it's oh, look what we've got here. Jess Newey. Wait. A promise or an agreement? You can make an agreement, and especially when you find the assumptions that you thought were true are no longer valid. Yes. It's actually, and that's actually I really grapple with this. I feel like I've been indoctrinated. I used to do sociology, and there was this definitely landmark, yes, definitely. But I've 6 years of training. I led their programs for 6 years, so indoctrinated integrity, right? I'm not so sure integrity is what I call it, though. That was also one of the things they said about me, was that I turned it into a thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it became a constraint rather than something to empower me. But
got it.
But there was also in sociology, there was this Emil Durkheim, or was it Max Weber? One of those theorists talked about the Protestant work ethic and the spirit of capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this kind of indoctrination into our culture, and I come from, a very working class family, very, very working class family. This indoctrination of task-orientated word. Do a lot of things, keep your word, keep up, get everything, all the task lists done. So there's this kind of spirit in which this work ethic is just indoctrinated to me as well. So you couple that with some distinction called integrity, and it was just something that messed me up for a while. But then I discovered, alignment, my own values, and I must admit it's been fucking with me a lot.
Well, I also think, it's like there's a what people would typically describe as kind of masculine. It's like it's around control. There's a part of us that wants everything to be lined up, for there to be spreadsheets, for there to be unshakable agreements, for there to because then we can finally feel safe because we know what's going on. The truth is that's just not the way our evolution happens. Our evolution is continually teasing us from the known to the unknown. And whilst we try and put kind of fence posts and structure in it, the more it tears that down and laughs in our face. And it's so, I just think there is this fine balance between having our word be our truth and our truth be our word, And at the same time, we become very, very careful around what we commit to, you know, alignment first. So it's like, whilst everything is in alignment and I'm following my highest principles of freedom and love and truth for me, knowing that it's ever changing and ever evolving, I am committed to do this thing. Right? I mean, it's, you know, it's like, I think the world of finite, like enduring promise over any kind of significant period of time is unwise.
Yeah. And look, it's just what Jess has said. Be very careful. Promises are highly emotive and not necessarily fully evolved or able to be relevant with each element of the organic flow of your delivery of true self.
Hallelujah. Loving
I know,
that.
I really, really get it. And Amanda, ticking everyone else's boxes. Totally. And that's actually what I got is at some point, again, this beautiful paradox that we have, at some point, I realized I was capable of a lot of things. You know, I probably when I first did Landmark, when I first started actually discovering myself, I was like, whoa, I'm capable of things I used to say I couldn't do. So I went and did it all. I was like, I can do this and this and this and this. And I just piled it up and piled it up and piled it up and piled it up. And I feel like I've now gotten to a point where I'm like, I can actually do anything. But not all of it serves me now. Not all of it's actually aligned with who I am. Not everyone in the world that is really good at making money. That's what I realized is money is not my driver.
Mm-hmm.
Purpose is my driver. So yeah, I started having to navigate through that and say no to things.
Yeah.
And then I noticed when I was to say no to things, these things are messy. And, you know, along the way, I've met some really great people and I've met a really great lady because inside of that alignment, new things started to show up.
Agreed. So let me just add something to that.
Yeah.
Because I was with you, and then you said something you said in the middle stuck out in ways that usually I'd be just nodding my head to it, but you know, I'm evolving with this, you know, and learning as we go along. But it was like you said, you know, it wasn't alignment with who I am, and I'm not sure about that. I think it's maybe more useful or more realistic for us to transcend the label of what we think in terms of the identity of who we are. And I prefer to think it's not in alignment with what's being called for. And I don't mean externally. I mean this ever-present evolving consciousness that we're equally part of. In each moment, it asks something different of us. And it's ever changing and ever evolving. And I think if our question is this in alignment with who I am? That's almost a broken question, because who you are is fluid. Like, as Amanda saying, it's the best word. Like Heraclitus says, you cannot put your foot in the same river twice, right? It's like we cannot put our brain in the same version of us twice. Every day, the point of where we are in the interconnected field has changed and shifted. And I think instead of asking, is this in alignment with who I am? It's like, am I in alignment with what's being called for?
I'm going to write that down. It's actually, that's mind-blowing for me, Tom, because I always go, is this in alignment? Am I in alignment with what's being called for? Makes it far more personal.
Yeah, but also it's like that you're working for the impersonal divine then, you know, and it's not actually about you. Right? It's like, you know, it's like what is being called for me. The two most powerful questions we can ask ourselves in any given moment is what's the truth and what would love do?
What's the truth and what would love do?
What's the truth and what we know the truth is subjective, so we have to do our best. But yeah, what's the truth and what would love do? And it's like, what's love calling for? What's consciousness calling for through us? And it's like, will our identity probably be a unique flavor in that? Yeah, probably, if we're not operating from fear and the desire to own territory and control. So our unique flavor is surely our playfulness and the jokes in our heart and the things we've learned along the way, you know. But it's yeah, I just think the more we can transcend any identity, any label, and realize in each given moment we are the edge of consciousness trying to evolve itself, then, you know, surely then the alignment is about evolution of all of us. and therefore we're not going to have the things that get in the way, which is the small I fear and the territorial and the possessiveness and the proprietorialism and all that stuff that takes us out of flow.
Absolutely. That is a practice. So you just said that. You just said, what would love do? And what was the other thing?
What's this?
What am I in alignment with?
What's the truth and what would love do? Not is this in alignment with me, but am I in alignment with what's being called for?
What's the truth and what would love do? This is a practice, right? This takes practice.
Yep, for sure.
Because I would honestly say that the biggest fear for me is the uncertainty of things.
I once had a client, this is relevant, I once had a client, and she basically got down to, I'm afraid of the unknown. And I got out a big piece of paper and I said, so let's talk about the known. And for her known, there was hardly any positive in her life. And we made this massive list of the known, anxiety, depression, loneliness, like anorgasmia, it was a shit show, And then I had a page of the unknown and I was like, how, surely this is by odds on, by the laws of probability alone, it's worth taking that leap. But for me, it's like whilst we have that part of us that is resistant to the unknown, then the unknown is no fun, right? It's like we can only enjoy the unknown if we drop our attachment to the known, right? Otherwise, it's like, oh, we don't know what's going on and it's unbearable. So people who really like control, they have some moments of unknowingness and hate it. And they think, well, that's the unknown. It sucks. It's like, that's not the unknown. That's the unknown with a need for known. What about dropping into the unknown without a need for the known? And then that becomes liberating.
Yeah, dropping into the unknown without the need for the known. When I think of the things that are unknown for me, magic, like miracles. This is what someone said to me today. Mm-hmm. Have you ever had miracles happen in your life? And I'm like, magic, miracles, things that just randomly happen because you give it space. What are other things that are like unknown for me? I've got a strategy for everything, man. Just thinking that. I do. I've got a strategy for everything. So when I think of what's in the unknown, it's not having a strategy for something.
That's
like
what
I have a strategy for connection, love, sex, all of it.
Wow. Amanda's got her work out with you. She's going to fuck you to freedom.
It's true.
But great though. You know what you should do is you should build a strategy. You should build a strategy for dropping strategies.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Just write that down. Add that to my strategy pack for tonight. Strategy for dropping strategies. Yeah.
Awesome. Good.
Yeah. No, it's true. And
so here's the thing, where we get to, with this thing as well, is like, it's actually not our adult spiritual self that's got an issue with the unknown. It's usually our unstable and unresolved inner child. Okay. And it's like that, it's too scary for them, right? They need certainty, and they needed it when we were little. We need stability and certainty when we're little, right? That's the reason why Osho kind of took the kids away from the parent form, and said they belong to the commune, so that these parents could have spiritual and spontaneous experiences without destabilizing the kids. Unfortunately, that massively destabilized the kids because they, their parents were like, don't call me mum, and were like deserting them to go and meditate and have group sex. It's like we need stability and certainty when we're growing, so that then we can be comfortable with uncertainty and with freedom when we're older. And so the inner child work, the healing our loss, healing our uncertainty, healing our betrayal, healing our heartbreak, and letting those parts know that we're now safe in ourselves, and that we can then, instead of projecting onto the divine universe our disappointing relationship with our parents, because then why would we trust the universe? Because we were let down before. But if we can heal those wounds, then our relationship with the divine universe that we are, not as something separate from us, enables us to surrender into that flow with faith. And the unknown with faith is bliss. The unknown with fear is hell. Don't try the unknown from a place of fear and then make a judgment call. It's not scientific. You have to work towards dropping into the unknown from a place of faith and experiencing that, and then make a choice. And you will definitely choose to continue that.
Yeah,
I saw there was a question coming. Ah.
You did. You had a question here from Amanda.
Yeah, I mean, so Amanda's asked, I have a question. When I share love, empathy, and positivity, it's not always welcome. That is your magic, but it's also your self-organizing principle. So what I saw in the early 90s, I was I'd spent, months in Goa, and I'd got very, very loved up. And I came back to Birmingham, a very kind of industrialized town in England, and was super loved up and would hug everyone and kiss everyone when I met them. And people bristled, and it freaked people out. And the truth is, I very quickly became a self-organizing principle. It's like Dr. Zeus said, be who you are, say what you feel. Those that mind don't matter, and those that matter don't mind. Ultimately, be your magic in your fullest. And that the people that are not your people will run a fucking mile. Most of them will. But the ones that are left will adore you, and you never need to think about what you do or how you do it ever again.
Beautiful. Any other questions?
Someone's telling you to sell strategy packs. I'll take 3, which is hilarious.
Oh, that's my whole business is strategies, social media strategies to amplify creatives and visionaries. Absolutely. I'll teach you guys to amplify your messages like you wouldn't believe. And I'm good at it. It's just not good in relationships.
Well, it's not good in relationship with reality.
No, right? It's not. Strategies is a skill. It's a skill that has a place, but it's not good for connection. It's in fact, strategies are not good for, like, it's just like you said,
it's not intimacy.
It's not.
And we want an intimate relationship with the divine universe and with our partners, obviously. And so then we have to trust enough that the world is there for us. One of my spiritual teachers said, at one point you just got to decide it's all okay or it isn't. Just make a choice. And if you decide it's all okay, then you can relax. And of course, it's not that easy. Our animalistic system hijacks our experience of reality and sells a sadder story. Yeah. But that's the daily work, and just like having a bath, you don't do it once. We know we need to keep clean and keep our system connected, loving, and in faith. And when we do, things work better. And when we don't, the universe will be very quick to point out where we're still being a dick.
Oh yes.
Oh totally. Yes. Flow, fluid, all the Fs. Definitely, all the Fs. Yeah. All the Fs.
I know that Amanda was talking about me in that question, just so you know. I was like, I have to say it. You know what she does? I'm going to say it.
Say it.
I have bad days sometimes, and I'm like, I just want you to listen to me. And I'm like, I just blur. And she'll just say, she'll give me this beautiful advice. Like, she'll go, do this and be positive and don't think of it like that way. And I'll be like, I just want you to listen. I don't want you to say anything.
But that's fair. Yeah. That's the greatest thing I learned in relationship is to hold space for that. Now, some people take that to mean that they get to do that every fucking day, and that's not okay either, right? But and the balance is right. There's a greatest, shortest film that you've got to watch, which I'll say to people. I'll try and find the link for it. But it's like it's not about the nail. And if you type it in, watch that with Amanda. It's the funniest short 2-minute movie about when we have a problem, we just want to be heard in our problem. We shouldn't fix it, but how hard it is to not do that. It's the funniest.
She does listen. You do listen, babe.
But I
Me
get
too.
sometimes I get that balance wrong, and my partner as well. You know, we're like, she starts to go to solutions. I'm like, babe, I just need the empathy system uploaded. She's like, oh yeah, sorry. And then sometimes I'm listening and I'm nodding, and she's like, well, I'm like, darling, I'm holding space empathically. I'm hearing you. And she's like, fuck that. I want your advice. What should I fucking do? You know?
I know. Sometimes I do that too. I know. I get it. It's so funny. Oh,
Mary, you deserve that.
You sure do, Mary. All right. Well, we've come to an end. It's like 10 past 10, Tom. Great key takeaways tonight. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you guys have I actually just sort of throw it in there. I'm like, you've got 20 years experience in relationships. You even said to me 6 months ago when I met, it wasn't that long. It was a few months ago, 5 months ago. And I was like, I don't want to be in a relationship. You're like, oh, I'm actually an expert in getting people in relationships. And here we are. I've had conversation after conversation. And now I'm in one with you because of you. It's actually probably because of you. So I was like, well, I might as well just get this one in, get some relationship advice while I've got you here. So thank you. But yeah, key really, really great takeaways tonight. I think being with what is, the way that it is. I mean, even if it's in relationship, if it's in energy, whatever it is, just being with what is right in front of you, not trying to fix or change anything, not trying to turn it into a masculine or feminine, an intellectual strategy, something that you need to, you know, intellectualize, like just being with the person in front of you. Is there anything else you want to say before we go?
Perfect summation. And thank you again. I love our conversations. By talking, I get clarity, which is what this is all about.
Yeah, absolutely.
And thank you to everyone that keeps tuning in. And I know we're on a number of different pages with various different numbers of people, but it's lovely to see kind of looking at the different, people in different groups. So yeah, lovely to see you all. We're here next Tuesday, midday for the UK and 9 p.m. for Australia.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. If you have any ideas on some themes for us as well, we would love to explore them.
Bye.
If you want, if you want to come on the show and have us talk to you, you can as well. So we will see you next week. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, guys.
Bye, Jess. Bye, everybody. Thanks.
Bye. Bye.